At the edge of the world, there's a city barely holding itself together. Behind it, nothing but wilderness, ruins, and things that should have stayed buried. For the past year, my players, their mercenary company, the Iron Price, has been trying to survive there. This is how it went, and what Pulp Hummock Press's Gods of the Forbidden North can actually deliver. All right, so this is an overview of what's going to be a new series for my channel. This series is dedicated to my Gods of the Forbidden North campaign written by Rob Alderman of Pulp Hummock Press. It is a monster campaign trilogy. Here is Volume 1. Okay, it's huge, right? Volume 2. Let's see if I can get it over here. It's like a workout lifting these things. Okay, and then Volume 3 was just released, and this is really big. I've been running it for about a year now, and I've been struggling to figure out the best way to review this absolutely massive trilogy written by my good friend Rob Alderman. I can tell you right now, Gods of the Forbidden North is an outstanding campaign setting. I love it. I've been enjoying it immensely. My players have been consistently challenged by it, and honestly, we've barely scratched the surface. What we're going to do here is something a little different. This series will function both as a review and as a play report. As you know, I started this channel playing games, recording myself playing those games, and then talking about them, because I have nothing against a flip-through review, but I feel like you get a little bit more from someone who's actually played the game. I haven't done something like that for a while on this channel for a variety of reasons. But for something like this campaign, I needed to do something. And I wanted to give a shout out to Howling Sphinx. He's a subscriber, viewer. He actually gave me the idea in one of in a comment somewhere. But anyway, thanks, man. It's a great idea, and that's what this is going to hopefully be. A combination play report and review of my Gods of the Forbidden North campaign. So similar to my Lamentations of the Flame Princess Temple of Elemental Evil campaign that used to be on this channel, you can actually find most of the videos over at Rumble. This is fundamentally a sandbox game that ends with like a mega dungeon. Maybe ends is not the right word. In my campaign, it was. Lamentations campaign, it was. But here, the mega dungeon is an option. But they're all in... all three books are interconnected. Gods of the Forbidden North takes place on this continent called Tithirion, and it's absolutely packed with locations, factions, and opportunities for players to sort of drive the story and explore. I have added a few locations of my own to help sort of flesh things out and tailor it to my own personal style of play. I like grimdark, I like a little tinge of horror, and there's definitely something horrific underneath the surface, Tithirion, rooted in its deep, deep lore. And I'm hoping to exploit that. Additionally, my players have taken it upon themselves to focus on the main city of this game called Valkengard. So I've incorporated a lot of Lamentations modules that take place in cities to sort of flesh things out. I believe it's safe to say Rob Alderman expected players to actually go out and explore the hex map, where my players, and I'll quote the de facto leader, he couldn't imagine exploring Tithirion without first making sure Valkengard was safe. So it's a very interesting observation, right? So, like my previous campaign, this series will include occasional digressions into discussing modules and supplements and rules discussions in addition to the play report. So Gods of the Forbidden North was written with old school essentials in mind. As an OSR system, though, you can use just about any OSR game of your choice. In fact, I've opted to take a kind of Frankenstein approach inspired by the Game of Games, run by Matthew Tapp at Barrows and Borderlands. Basically, the fundamental rule set we started out with is the Rules Cyclopedia, chosen mostly out of nostalgia. I grew up playing the original box sets of Basic, Expert, Companion, Master, and Mortal. A lot of fond memories playing those games, or that game. So the Rules Cyclopedia kind of captures most of that. All right, so let's talk about the trilogy. As I said, it's 1,500 pages between the three books. Book one covers the setting, the world of Tithirion, I should say the continent, its major cultures, factions, and the overworld hex map and early level dungeons. Book two moves into the underworld, essentially the Underdark, and introduces a few higher level locations, including potential connections to the Mega Dungeon and one of the creepy cult that's working behind the scenes and everything. And then, of course, Book 3 is dedicated to Castle Tharganon, the Mega Dungeon itself. My understanding, there is over 1,000 keyed entries for that Mega Dungeon. The background material in this book is very, very dense. One of the criticisms a lot of people have had, myself included, is that a lot of the deep lore, especially the cosmological history of Tithirion and gods of the Forbidden North, probably could have been moved into the appendix for easier reference and not overwhelm the game master on their first read through. That said, I believe familiarity with that material is useful as players explore the world. When they go off and do something strange and different, you'll be ready to just answer any questions they have. At the center of this lore is a chthonic entity known as Volsung, the Endworm, a deeply unsettling and otherworldly being worshipped by the cult of the Magoth. This entity ties into many aspects of the setting, both in terms of magic items, the factions, and certain dungeon locations. Connected to this cult is also a demi-god-like being called the Skull God. He's the one that built Castle Tharganon. This was several hundred years ago. After fleeing the Hadean Empire and subjugated the Enaruk on Tithirion, he was eventually defeated by the Hadeans and the Enaruk, but many lives were lost. And there's some really great historical battles that had taken place with involving that war. But ultimately, the Hadeans were so shattered from the war, they had to retreat, and they couldn't explore Castle Tharganon. Then the Hadean Empire collapses, so now you just have Valkengard, the city on the edge of this wasteland, and this looming castle. So enter the adventurers, right? There's three major cultures in Tithirion. The Enaruk, which are the natives, they're inspired by Inuit cultures. They have a belief system that's animistic and nature-based, with water being sort of like the main godlike being that they worship. Makes sense, right? Water, snow, ice, the whole nine. They were subjugated, by the Skull God. So some of them are, we'll just say, are violent. And there's like political issues involved with the Enaruk in relation to the Hadean occupation. Which turns to the Hadeans. They are a Roman-like empire, rigid, hierarchical religious structure reminiscent of early Catholicism. Their worldview is in a stark contrast to the Enaruk's animism. I made one major adjustment. Instead of the Hadean Empire having fallen about 40 years ago, for me, it's a little bit more imminent, such that Valkengard being removed from the main continent, which there's no map to, it's, whatever, it's like deemed like this one last bastion. So it explains a lot of the refugees and adventurers and other people going to Valkengard to escape all the civil war that's just gripping the former Hadean Empire. And then there's what's called the Wujan. I believe this was intended to be sort of like an Asian sort of category, but in a more broader cultural context, it's anybody who's not Hadean or Enaruk, because a couple of my players are into Vikings history. We've included that, so it's also the Norse. And like I mentioned before, there is a cult called the Magoth. there's an entire section on how the Magoth cult works, just like there is an entire section on how the Anaruk's religious cosmological system works, as with the Hadeans' religious beliefs. Very great detailed stuff. I really like it. In fact, it's one of my favorite sections because I've been able to use it to tie into RPG Pundit's alternative magic systems, which we'll talk about in another video. So starting the campaign, the main hub is the city of Valkengard, which serves as the player's base of operations, at least early on. Rob Alderman provides significant detail of each of the major districts of the city's major NPCs, their allegiances, as well as notes on law, order, and what the City Watch does. With the direction my players have taken in this campaign, I've been forced to sort of build upon what he's already done. So you're going to see some stuff that I do that's not in the book, and I'll try to let you know when that's happening. But Rob does give you enough to basically do stuff in Valkengard as they come back from their exploration, their hex crawling or dungeon crawling. But yes, the Iron Price, the mercenary company has been focusing on ensuring Valkengard is a safe place and in their control. What's interesting, though, is this Volume 1 starts the game off with an interesting sort of Session 0 style scenario. The players arrive by ship and go through a registration process that doubles as character creation. So each step is rolling attributes and then class selection, equipment, etc. And this involves sort of like the PCs interacting with the ship's captain or the medic or the quartermaster. I like this. My players enjoyed it and helped sort of reinforce the idea that they are refugees from a fallen empire arriving at the last bastion of civilization on the edge of a dangerous northern wilderness. That said, this section is somewhat controversial. Some reviewers really don't like it. I think it adds flavor, but truth be told, it's probably not essential to a campaign, especially if you're dealing with experienced OSR type players. But I thought it was a nice introduction, and it helped my players sort of discuss what they were going to play. In fact, they opted not to have a fighter in their party because they had 2 dwarves. That was sort of their rationale. So after character creation, the campaign shifts into a more structured adventure path style. It's sort of an introductory adventure. The players start off with an artifact called the Eye of Jakara, a gemstone amulet tied to a hidden treasure that they only know about, called the Morkal's Tomb. And they've come to the Forbidden North seeking it. Along the way, they encounter an antagonist from their past, necromancer by the name of Zarkon. They do battle with him when he ambushes them in an alley, and the adventure concludes with the PCs meeting a guy named Captain Kumak of Northwatch Tower, who registers them as an adventuring guild. This is actually how the Iron Price was born. My players were just kind of new to the OSR style of play, and realizing they don't have plot armor and are not like the center of attention, they kind of were looking at each other, and one of my players just looked up and said, I think we should call ourselves the Iron Price. We can hire mercenaries, right? That sounds like a mercenary thing to name yourself. Total silence fell across the table, and everyone slowly nodded in unison. Boom, the Iron Price. So it was pretty cool. I was really excited because I had such a great name. My criticism of this adventure pass is that it is in stark contrast from the rest of the book, which is an open world sandbox. Sure, there's some interesting NPCs that are introduced at the Brick Mammoth Inn that happens right before the ambush. And you get to learn a little bit about the factions at play in Valkengard, including a noble and a son who's captured by the Nolakul Syndicate, Shun slavers. But in the end, I feel it was a distraction and from what the book does best. And with my players, it went off the rails real quick. I will say this, though, there's a really fun nod to Frank Metzer's Alina hanging out in the Brick Mammoth Inn. She'll heal your players if you offer a prayer to the Hadean god. Alina. Anyway, Another problem is that Zarkon was supposed to be a means to explain the group being banded together, but in practice he really felt artificial. My players had no real emotional investment in him. He didn't seem like a reoccurring villain, especially because that was the first time he showed up. Plus, due to some lucky rolls, they took care of him really quickly. So I don't really think he was necessary. I'd rather have the walk step-by-step session 0 adventure than this. If I were to run this again or start it again, I'd keep the character creation intro, point the players to the Brick Mammoth Inn for rumor collection only, seed them some information to get them started, and then just that's it. Maybe Zarkon could be the leader of a rival mercenary group or something. So, for everyone's edification, the Iron Price includes the following characters, at least at the beginning: Redon, an Enaruk thief; Beisho, a Wujan monk; Bendik, a Norse cleric; Hjalmar, a Norse magic user using dream magic from RPG Pundit's Old School Essentials Companion 3, and then Grimhild, a dwarven storyteller, female. Huge debate about whether female dwarves have beards at my table. They do. And then Grimdal is a dwarf, former military from the Hadean Empire. They were all very excited about their characters for the most part. For this campaign, I decided to experiment with one-to-one timekeeping. Essentially, 1 week in real-world time takes up 1 week in in-game time. I'm not one of these guys who thinks one-to-one timekeeping is the end-all be-all. I just think it's a tool to use in your Game Master toolbox. I believe every campaign is different, and when you sit down to start a campaign, you're starting a brand spanking new game, and you're considering all kinds of things, not just the rules and the setting, but how many players you're going to have, what your players are like, what they're going to expect, how often you play, that sort of thing. Because my players are family men, we can't game every week, so we typically play every 4 to 6 weeks. This one-to-one timekeeping seemed to be a good way to sort of keep things moving without like long stretches of just nothing happening, in the real world, so to speak. And that allowed them to train for new levels and increase their weapon capabilities. And we'll get into that when we start talking about the Rules Cyclopedia. Research spells, do a little role playing, and honestly, with Adventure Conquer King system, there's a lot they can do. And I was referencing when they started getting into some shenanigans in the city. Truth be told, adjusting to one-to-one timekeeping has been a struggle for my group. They're just not used to it. But honestly, after a year of playing this campaign, I can't imagine doing Gods of the Mid-North with anything else in terms of timekeeping. I do use a D100 table for those players who are not interested in actually engaging with one-to-one downtime activities. I've left that pretty much. If you want to do it, you can. If not, I'm going to roll on a table just to have something happen to you. Nothing too detrimental, but something that will sort of hopefully encourage them and teach them that this world is moving whether they are or not. And that's really like why I wanted to use one-to-one timekeeping in light of the fact we play on average once a month. And one other thing, a couple other things. This game, the book, the layout and all that stuff, while there are some nitpicky issues I have with it, I've been able to run it with no prep. I review my notes from the session before and whatever happened during downtime, and then I just start rolling dice. I do have to flip through the book on occasion, but you get weather tables, random encounter tables. There's all these keyed hexes that are got some really neat stuff going on in it beyond just like the dungeons that are in these books. I haven't gotten into the underworld yet, but that looks very similar. So it's fantastic for no prep play, especially if you're a busy guy like me. And I'd like to point out, while the Iron Price has got its thing that it's doing, a friend of mine, Greg Christopher, you might know him as Chubby Funster, he's been running Gods of the North with his game. I think he calls it Ambition and Avarice, an OSR system that he wrote. And we compare notes from time to time, and he's got a radically different thing going on with his campaign, which just shows you how well put together this trilogy is. Like, your players are going to be able to make it their own. I think he's got a cleric, a 5th or 6th level cleric player who's like on a holy crusade against the Magoth, versus the Iron Price, who are in it for the money. You know what I mean? So my players came to Valkengard as refugees, broke, unknown, and untested. After a year, they've made enemies, they made some discoveries, and they've uncovered things they don't fully understand. But they're starting to realize that the North is watching them back. The Iron Price has proven itself a power in the Forbidden North, and they have made this story theirs. After a year with Gods of the North, I can say this. This is one of the most ambitious and demanding campaigns I've ever run. While it's not perfect, some parts feel unnecessary and others are buried under layers of lore. But when it works, it creates something few campaigns can. A world that feels vast, dangerous, and alive. And for my group, we're just getting started. In the next video, we're going to dig into the first adventure site, Morkal's Tomb, and what the Iron Price was doing there and what happened. I'll show you exactly what happens when players start pulling on the threads of this world. If you like this video, please hit like and subscribe, the bell icon. I have a live stream Friday nights at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time with my buddy Gary. We talk games and gaming. Would love to see you in chat. Until next time.